long-term 48-year resident of Northglenn, and this is a very important night. I know looks like there's not a lot of people here, but actually in reality there are, because this is being live streamed on YouTube. So think about it this way, there's at least 1 million people watching, for sure. The other thing I wanted to just point out, which I think is kind of a fun fact, is something you can tell your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren or whatever. This is the first event in this theater. This forum is the very first thing that's happening, and I think we should all be proud of such a beautiful facility, and that this candidate forum is kind of significant as the first thing happening here. So welcome, and let's start out by, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all would stand, please, and remove your hats. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This event tonight is hosted by the Rotary Club of Northland Thornton. The Rotary clubs have a long history of hosting candidate forums and providing information to citizens in a nonpartisan way, always, about issues or candidates. So this is just an example of one of the things that Rotary clubs do, not only nationally but internationally. There's well over 1 million members, and I don't know how many clubs, but if you go almost to any city internationally and in the United States, you can see a Rotary club is, either is holding their meetings at, a restaurant or a community center or something like that. Anyway, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Northland Thornton Rotary. We were chartered in 1968, which is, what was I then, 10?
Oh, you were way young.
Something like that, yeah.
Very young.
Anyway, we have one charter member who still is with us, and that's Odell Berry. We just celebrated 50 years 2 years ago, and it's a very active club. Initially, they met at, for those of you who lived in Northglenn for a very long time, they met at the Spice of Life, which was a restaurant at the Northglenn Mall, for those of you who remember that. After that, they met at the Glen Eagle restaurant in the old Bronco Inn. For some of you, I'm speaking another language, but for some of you, this may be bringing back some memories. And we've become and grown and evolved over time, and they never used to allow women, and they do now, of course. And in 1982, we became the Northland Thornton Rotary. It started out being just the Northland Rotary, and in the past, some of the projects they did was they purchased a van for seniors, senior transportation. They hosted a circus 2 years two separate years. It just is a very active club and still is. Currently, we provide scholarships for students who don't have any resources to go to college. We've shifted gears a little bit this year, and we kind of move with the times, and are going to give full scholarships to technical schools for kids that are looking to be plumbers or electricians or that kind of thing. So, because we know the need is there. We also are long-time supporters of CASA, the court-appointed special advocates. We adopt 35 adolescents at Christmas time, and we fulfill their 3 wishes. It's a wonderful program, and nobody ever remembers that there's adolescents at Christmas that are in foster care. We also, and probably the more visible thing we've done in the last probably 10 years, we started out with just a tabletop full of food, and now we're into pallets of food for the 4 local food banks. And this year we we probably did about $10,000 worth of food. So at a time when it was really needed in this community. So that's just a little bit about Rotary, and I'm sorry we have to do our spiel before we start with the real business, but I just want to introduce our moderator. But before I do that, I want to mention that there are voter registration forms in the lobby. If you haven't already voted, I got my ballot today. So, and the other thing I want to mention is that this is being live streamed. So there's, on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to their fabulous answers. Again, if you want to hear what they say again. We're not going to have any breaks. We're just going to go through this, and I'm sure you guys want to just get it over with, right? There's a meet and greet afterwards. So if you want to talk to the candidates, you're certainly welcome to do that. And the last thing is, if you have a question that you would like us to ask, I think the ushers have little pieces of paper. If you have a question you want to ask, they'll come and pick them up. You just need to kind of flag one down. I think there's an usher right here. So that's really, and there's one up top too. I see Russ Van Houten's up there. All right, with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Mark Walker. He's a Thornton resident. He was a career banker, having served 27 of his 33-year banking career, serving the Metro North communities of Northglenn, Thornton, Westminster, and Arvada. He was a branch president and commercial lender. Mark was actively involved in the Metro North area, serving on a number of boards and commissions, including, but not limited to, as the vice chair of the Business and Governmental Affairs Division of the Metro North Chamber of Commerce. He also served on the board and taught financial literacy to 2 organizations mentoring and training at-risk youth and young adults. Mark's here tonight to moderate this forum as a 35-year member of the Rotary Club of Northglenn, Thornton, where he has served as president twice, and has exemplified the Rotary motto, which is service above self. All right, Mark?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad to see you here. Good evening, candidates. I hope you're duly nervous, and we'll try to put you on the spot as much as we can. How's that? Is that a good way to start? I think where we might want to start first, however, is let you each introduce yourself. I'll introduce the name, and you can just kind of wave, and the crowd can acknowledge your presence. So from Ward 1, we have Nicholas Walker. We have 3 candidates from Ward 2. The first, Gerald Montour. Jay Jaramillo. Everett Renberg. From Ward 3, we have Mark Bromley. 2 candidates from Ward 4, Ginny Wilford. And Shannon Lukman Haromasa. She challenged me on that last name, so I think I got that one right. One of our candidates is not here this evening, but it's a special occasion. Julie Mullica is a current counselor, I believe, and a candidate once again. She's in Oregon celebrating her grandmother-in-law's 100th birthday, so that's kind of neat. So she wasn't able to be with us. All right, candidates. So we have some instructions, and we have the real boss out here. I'll tell you about her in just a minute. But first of all, this is a conversation. Number one, this is not a debate tonight, so we're not going to challenge you. You're not going to challenge one another. You're just going to express your opinion. You've been out on the campaign trail, going door to door, different events and what have you, been speaking your piece, if you will. Just let this be that same kind of conversation tonight. It'll be relaxed, and I'm sure we'll enjoy hearing what you all have to say. We'll conduct the forum as fairly as possible. I'll alternate the questions so that each candidate has the opportunity to answer a question first. Opening statements will be limited to 2 minutes, and then the questions themselves will be allowed 3 minutes. So you have a little bit more time with those. We're going to have a lightning round, and the lightning round will be a yes or no answer, unless I instruct you otherwise. What I would recommend is if one of the lightning round questions strikes your fancy and you want to express more on that, you'll have a closing statement in which you'll have 2 minutes to be able to express, a closing position, but further you can expand upon that subject. We're going to have a timer here this evening, and here we are. And Joanna, city clerk from Northglenn, has the timer. She's the boss. So you're going to have a 15-minute single ding warning, and then when your time is up, it'll be 2 dings, at which time I'll interrupt you to finish your sentence. Do you have any questions? I guess we can get started. So, for the opening statement, and again, I want to be fair in the process, so let me grab my pen so I can keep track. We're going to have opening statements, and I guess I'll just go in order since it's simple that way. From Ward 1, Nicholas Walker. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Good evening. My girlfriend and I have both lived in Northglenn for 3.5 years now. Stay very involved with the community, including being part of the Community Co-Production Policing Board, the Liquor License Authority, and also with the Snowstormers, which is a volunteer organization that helps remove snow from our disabled and elderly persons' driveways and everything. One of my main components of my campaign is make sure we support our police. We have a great police force here in Northglenn. Our crime is not trending in the correct way. Our funding, with the national media and the rhetoric that is out there, it could be in jeopardy. And so we need to look at things like different styles of recruitment and retention. Some other cities have some better retention programs that I think we could model after or create our own. Some small things like having a full-time mental health personnel to help with the police, because not only after a critical incident, just being a police in today's world is a very stressful thing, and that could help keep our retention, because right now recruiting them out of the academy is very difficult right now. It's a tough time to be a police officer. We need to make sure we have their back and support. One of the other things is I think we need to bring more attention to our high-performance government, which is something we talk about in our 360 assessment. And I think we need to do a better job of bringing forth our programs that we do for our community, things like the Gun Safe program, where the city will help fund gun safes for residents to a certain percentage to help keep firearms safe, or the No Need for Speed program to help keep our residential streets safe, as speeding and traffic is obviously a problem here in Colorado. And then, community things like the Block Party trailer, which is free from the city, and it just takes a reservation. But that's a good thing to help the community get together. And like I said, all that's free, and they provide a lot of that. But a lot of people don't know about that, and these things when I ask them. And things like the Northglenn app, where you can submit pictures and complaints of graffiti and things like that. People just don't know about that, and I think we need to do a better job of getting that out in front of them.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Gerald Montour.
Yat Mene. My name is Gerald Montour. I'm a member of the Diné Nation and the Haudenosaunee Nation. I've lived in Northland now 13 and a half years. I'm married. My wife and I share 10 great-grandchildren, but they come from 6 children and 11 grandchildren. So we have a family that is very supportive. I come as a citizen and I work countless hours. I'm also on the Community Co-Production Policing Board, where I would like to see more accountability from our police department that is protecting our citizens, so that our citizens are the main concern of our police force now in Northland. But with that, I want to also come to the point of equity. In equity, our community needs vary from citizen to citizen, and their concerns are very important. I want to bring our community voices and to our city government in order to make those decisions that affect our community as a whole. My goal is to end what we've seen as a status quo and to bring the community's input into the city government and the decisions that are being made. Equality. Our neighborhood is diverse and continues to grow as a valuable community. I want to bring an equal opportunity to every citizen and the ability to be included in the decisions that are being made in our government and affect our quality of life and talents. Change. I want to be a change agent that brings the new city and the government engages with the community in the decisions that are being made and the effect of the city, our growth, our way of life, the daily encounters with those that represent our city as our elected officials. I want to bring a responsive and accountability government to our community as a norm.
Thank you, Mr. Montour. Mr. Jaramillo.
Hello, my name is J. Michael Jaramillo. I'm a proud Northglenn resident since 1990. I'm a product of Northglenn, born and raised, and I've seen our city grow, as you can see here. I'm honored to be here on the first event that we're having here in Parsons Theater. This is my second time running because I truly want to lead Northglenn in a forward direction. I believe that I can make that happen by listening to my neighbors and listening to their concerns. And whether it's safety in general, if that's dealing with speeding in our neighborhood, if that's police, because I want to make sure that our police are continuing to be retained here so we still have a safe neighborhood for all generations to grow, which I had. I always felt safe here in Northglenn growing up, and I still do. And I want to continue to keep Northglenn as a place where we don't see homelessness. That's something that's been going on. I realize we have the homelessness task force, and I know how to, I've spoken with these people too that are experiencing this. We need to see people as people and help them, assist them. And there are programs to help them, whether it's mental health, to get jobs, and also for temporary housing at motels. So also I want to really express that Northglenn is a wonderful community, and I am so proud to be in this position. And from the candidates that we have here, we're in a good place, but I believe that I am the most qualified to take us forward. And that's with my master's in public administration that I received from the University of Colorado. I believe I can help form public policy that truly helps us here in Northglenn.
Great timing. I think you'll find that some of the things you're saying here tonight are going to be echoed in some of the questions. So we're not all quite as diverse or as far away from one another as we might think. So there's a lot of commonality, and you'll start to see that. Next presenting will be Mr. Everett Renberg.
Good evening. I'm Everett Renberg, and before I start with my opening statement, I would just like to thank the Rotary Club for facilitating this event and for all of you being here and for everyone watching. I have lived in Northglenn my entire life, as I know of no other community. I went to Waiko Elementary School. I grew up on 116th Drive. I rode my bike on Claude and Irma. I played soccer at the Rocky Mountain Sports Facility. I ran around the farmer's market at Carl's Dairy Farm. And I attended Northglenn High School. I've participated in the Northglenn Youth Commission since I was 13 years old. And I'm now a part of the DICE board, which is the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee here in Northglenn. Right now I'm studying finance at Regis University and economics as well. There I'm partnering with a few other students on ESG investing, which is environmental, social, and governmental investing, trying to use capital in a positive way, as we should here in our community. I am running not as a vocational desire, not because I desire to be in office, because it is a career choice of mine, as I have never really wished that. I'm doing this because I feel as though it is a duty. The collective whole in my community need people like us, all of us here, and people who truly care to step up. And my community and my country are in a dark place. And I think that we ought to come together again and realize what our community is facing and make an important decision, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renberg. Next speaker will be Mark Bromley.
Thank you, City of Northglenn and Rotary Club of Northglenn, Thornton, Colorado, for tonight's candidate foreman. Thank you, Moderator Mark Walker, and the people of Northglenn for being here tonight. I'm Mark Bromley for Ward 3. I was born in Northglenn, and Northglenn is my family. I don't know anything other than this place, and I'm here to actually take care of my city of Northglenn, as well, a lot of people encouraged me to come back here to and actually help out the city of Northglenn. Well, we need to actually create more division on our city council. We need to actually get more variety of partisan values onto our city council. And I'll never let down the city of Northglenn because, well, you're all my family, and I believe that I owe it to my city of Northglenn to make sure that everybody is treated fairly, listened to, and actually can have a councilman that represents all of our values here in the city of Northglenn. My priorities were stated in 2019, and a lot of those values were influenced on the city council, and the council is still going forward with those values, and I'm proud of that. I like the fact that the council has actually listened to me back in 2019 and actually moved forward on a different path than the path that they were taking back then. My new goals are a little bit more loftier, more intensive, like, for instance, lowering taxes. Everybody likes to have lower taxes and still be able to operate the city accordingly, and to make sure that our taxes are being used appropriately and not being misdirected towards partisan agendas or other partisan politics within our city, because I don't think our taxes should leave the city, they should stay here in the city. Also, I want to improve our economic conditions and also improve our schools for education for success, the American way. My background is Northland. I grew up here, went to Western Colorado, served in the Navy. My wife's Japanese, and I'm a white father of an Asian family. Anyways, that's all I have to say here for today, and I got cut a little bit short.
Thank you, Mr. Bromley.
Thank you.
All right. Our next candidate speaking will be Jenny Wilford.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you to the Northland Thornton Rotary for hosting this event. My name is Jenny Wilford, and I've had the privilege and honor of serving on Northglenn City Council representing Ward 4 for the past 4 years. Before I talk more about my experience on council, I want to tell you a little bit about me. I moved a lot when I was growing up. By the time I graduated high school, I'd lived in 6 different states and attended 8 different schools. My dad was in the military and my mom was a librarian, and they both instilled in me a deep spirit of public service and commitment to investing in the communities where we were living. Whether we were helping out a neighbor or volunteering at our local church, we were always encouraged to contribute and to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. My husband and I met when we were in college at the University of Wyoming, and after we got married, we knew that we were ready to put down roots and start a family, and we chose Northglenn. We've been here since 2014, and we feel really lucky to be raising our 2 kiddos here. I love Northglenn because of our solid homes, our great parks, and our neighbors who absolutely feel like family. My professional background is in advocacy and campaigns, and I'm really passionate about climate action. I currently work as an advocate for the Colorado Sierra Club, and I'm deeply concerned about our air quality and the world that we're leaving to our children. 4 years ago, I knocked on thousands of doors because I wanted to build a more inclusive, responsive, and vibrant Northglenn. In my time on council, I've learned about the complexity of the issues facing our city. I've worked to create new opportunities for residents to come to the table and be involved in our decision-making processes. I've supported infrastructure investment and been a part of building out regional partnerships to move our community forward. I sit here this evening proud of everything we've been able to accomplish as a council and excited about our future. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Ms. Wilford. Our next speaker will be Shannon Lukman-Heramosa.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for hosting this wonderful event and this wonderful new theater. Very exciting to be here, and I'm trying not to stare at the bright light, but it's kind of like a moth to the flame where you can't help but do it. My name is Shannon Lukman Hiromasa, and I currently sit as the Ward 4 council member. Since mid-June, I took over Antonio Escobel's remainder of his term when he moved to be closer to family. So I'm a new council member since June. I feel blessed, and it's been quite a steep learning curve, but I am very proud to serve our community and wish to continue to do so. I've lived in Northglenn since 2015 after owning a home in Fort Collins and commuting back and forth to Broomfield because my husband and I own several businesses along the Front Range. We are entrepreneurs, and I believe in taking ownership and putting in hard work to reap the benefits from that. I've been married 26 years to my husband. He is originally from Hawaii, and that's where I met him. I am Puerto Rican, so we have a very interesting household, to say the least, a good combination. I have 3 beautiful children. They're all grown. My son has Asperger's autism, so I do understand what it's like to live in a family and deal with disabilities and all the needs that come along with that as well. My oldest daughter is a police officer, so also from that perspective, having a first responder in the family and the turmoil that we've had over the last couple of years has been very challenging for our family, and she is also a person of color, so for her, she's also seen the other side of that as well. So I'm very passionate about supporting our police department and making sure that they have the tools and the funding to have the equipment, the necessary personnel. I just heard that we are only safer than 10% of cities in Northglenn throughout the United States, so that's something that I'm concerned about. I've lived in many different places, Spain, India, in the jungles of Belize. I have a diverse background and currently serve on the Community Co-Production Police Advisory Board, Northland Senior Organization, Adams 12 Board of Education, Finance Committee, and Outside Funding Agency.
Thank you very much. Well done. So now we're going to go to our pre-prepared questions. There are 7 questions, and I want you to be just as candid as you have been in your opening statements. You have a little bit more time, so you have 3 minutes, and we'll try to make sure that you have a chance to finish that. Try to stay within that 3 minutes, and then we'll go forward. We're going to start with Gerald Montour as the first responder to the following question. What personal skills do you believe you bring to council that are uniquely yours and will be beneficial to the group as a whole?
With a bachelor's degree from the University of Northern Colorado and a master's degree from the University of Phoenix, I'm an educator. I currently am a principal at a middle school, so I look at my community as a whole. When I look at my ability, I've sat on the Denver Indian Center board. I'm currently on the co-production policing board. I've been involved in the city of Northglenn in various council meetings, various meetings with the chief of police, Chief May, and I bring to the table a desire to include our community as a whole. Our community has a voice, our community has ideas, and our community is coming to the table wanting to be part of a government that is not inclusive. When I think of our city government, and I brought up earlier about status quo, I want to be able to bring our community into the city government. So I bring a multiple of talents in language, second language learners, and an education system that serves our community. When I went out and I talked to our community is not a monolingual community. When I think about our community and having access to what we have in the city government, I know that I can bring an inclusive community into city government. When I talked to a constituent, she asked me why the senior citizen, her as a senior, it does not include her. And I asked, what does she mean? She said, I go there, I speak fluent Chinese, and I speak very little English, and I can't understand what is there for me. I spoke to a family that was predominantly Spanish speaking. And they asked, why are things not written so that I can understand them, so that I know what the government is about? So I bring a talent to be able to organize our community and to be able to bring city council into our wards so that we can make our community inclusive into the city government. How do we do that? By you becoming the change agent with me. How do we do that? By putting me in that position that can make our city an inclusive city. Stop the status quo and end what was then and start the new. And bring together our community as a whole. Thank you.
Candidates, can you hear me adequately? Okay, and if you need for me to repeat any of the questions, please do so, no problem. So our next responder will be Jay Jaramillo. And the question again? What personal skills do you believe you bring to council that are uniquely yours and will be beneficial to the group as a whole?
The personal skills that I possess is that I know the people who are in positions that are working for the city that can help make those changes happen that people want to see. When they tell me that they want to fix their roads, I know who to talk to. I know about homelessness, who to talk to. I know everybody that works in the city clerk's office with everything they can help with there. I know everybody in the city manager's office and all the work that they're doing. And I can tell people that they can access which information they need to really create the change that they want to see in Northglenn. Because when I went door to door and I was talking to my constituents, they would tell me issues they had, concerns they had. And I would always have an answer with them, what they can do. And if I went to your home, please look at the back of that flyer that I sent you and I delivered to you, because it'll have the remedies for each problem that you have going on. If not, you can contact me. I'm very transparent. I've answered emails this past week from people that have just asked me questions about my campaign, about what I could do about something that's going on in their neighborhood. And I was happy to help them, to direct them to, when they emailed me, to links that they can go and access these PDFs to help get their community, their neighbors, to make that change in their neighborhood. You know, because Northglenn is a community. We're a city, but we're also, when you've lived here this long, you know enough people, and you listen to their voices, you know them, they know you. And that's what I love about Northglenn. And I feel that my years living here and getting, even working here, volunteering as the Northglenn Arts Humanities Foundation board member, I know people all over that are doing great things here. They're doing the jobs that they have to do, and I want to be in this position in city council, because I can see so many opportunities for Northglenn to become better, and it's something that I am welcome to, hearing from everybody and being the change that we seek to see here in Northglenn, but also having the ideas and being innovative to move our city forward, to look at what's possible. What else can we do here in Northglenn to continue to make Northglenn be a desirable place for all generations, whether you've lived here as long as 50 years ago, or you just moved in this past year. Northglenn is a wonderful place to live, and I want to continue it to be that way forward into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. Mr. Renberg?
May I please hear the question again?
You bet. What personal skills do you believe you bring to the council that are uniquely yours and will be beneficial to the group as a whole?
Thank you. My mom is in the audience tonight, and so is my really good friend, and they both know that when I want to do something, that I'll do everything that I can to do it. I'm sort of stubborn. Some people are not very stubborn. I'm also not inept. I'm not stupid. I'm a team player all the way, and that's all I've ever known is a team. When you really consider what it means to be a part of, a legislative body, it becomes something of, philosophical in the sense of like what each person is bringing. What are you even trying to address? What is the Legislative Assembly even trying to address? There are very tangible problems that plague our society that we all deal with all the time. And to have, this fortitude of mind and of soul and of purpose, that is how you address problems. No problem can sustain constant attack from thought and ideas. In the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee that I work in, and I believe somebody up there, I don't remember. Anyway, we deal with this all the time. What does it mean to be diverse and inclusive? What even is equality? In the liberal sense, there are different types, again, of justice, of equality. To understand these and to open up these conversations, to be open to different perspectives is key. If we don't have input from the whole of society, nothing will get done. And this is what I offer. I offer my community and this legislative assembly, by and for the people, my great passion and conviction, again, for my country and my community, for my deep love of hearing different perspectives. I will conversate about everything and anything that I can. I'm not afraid to talk or to debate because we need to be dedicated to the problems that face us now. It's important, again, to be a part of society and to realize that we are all part of the collective whole, and I think that I'm conscious of these things, where I'm not too sure if people are. I offer, again, my passion and conviction, my deepest humility to my community, to my constituents, and to my country. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. Mr. Bromley.
Mark Walker. Well, what skills do I bring to the city of Northglenn? Well, I bring a lot of skills to the city of Northglenn. I actually left my hometown of Northglenn to go out and seek the world and see what was actually in it, to actually get to know a lot of different people from different perspectives. And after Northland High School, I took off to Western Colorado University. That's where I became part of a Theta Chi fraternity. I became the pledge coordinator, secretary of that fraternity, and part of the leadership of that fraternity, and the glue for 33 guys that held that fraternity together, and about 20 little sisters of Theta Chi at that time that were part of our fraternity as well. We were like the very first mixed fraternity in the state of Colorado at that time, I do believe. What do I actually really offer? Well, my Navy skills actually came in quite handy. I actually became an enforcer of code and laws and regulations and SOFA agreements in foreign countries. I worked with politicians in foreign countries. I got to know a few individuals up in the embassies working with some unique problems, and I became a transgender community liaison to resolve some of the issues that would transpire from time to time with the United States Navy while working on 2 flight decks of 2 aircraft carriers as my main job. And in my main job, I actually learned a lot about how government works, how it actually is fueled, how the funding is resolved, and well, when you got very expensive parts and they're used once in launching an airplane off the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, a lot of politics come into play, especially when you have to repair that flight deck and you have to actually keep it serviceable so you can actually get our men and women to actually do their jobs and protect the United States of America, because all of our lives are valuable. And I don't think a lot of people often fail to forget how important our veterans are and the services that they actually provide for our country and the things that they do on a daily basis, and they risk their lives quite a bit. I risked my life 4 times while I was in the service. And I can say after the service, I came back here to Homeland Security, another enforcement thing, working with laws, working with the government agencies at the local, state, and national levels. And it's truly amazing what you can actually learn in the federal government as far as how it's operated, how it's funded, how the organization works, and how you can become a leader and be able to push forward for even the City Council of Northland and the people of Northland. And you're all my family, and I just came back here just to help out the city of Northland, and hopefully I get on the City Council and I do a lot more jobs for you that are actually to your satisfaction, and that I'm that open door that you guys can come over to anytime, talk to, and get that assistance that you need in the city. I'm Mark Bromley, and I look forward to being your next Ward 3 council member.
Thank you for your military service, Mr. Bromley. Ms. Wilford?
Yes, thank you, Mark. The personal skills that I'll bring with me to City Council when I return include the sense that I'm responsive, I'm persistent, I'm passionate, experienced, and collaborative. And one example that I will give you all of this is in 2017, when I was knocking on doors, I was on Melody Drive, and I met a woman who had shared with me that she was really concerned about the speeding cars that she had seen going up and down her street. She had grandkids and didn't want them to play out front because she was worried about their safety. And when I asked her if she had reached out to the city to, get some assistance and to learn about the different options, she told me that she had. But what she learned was that it was on her to go out and talk to all of her neighbors. And she had to get a petition with 75% of her neighbors signing off on any sort of changes to that roadway, which was next to impossible for her because she had just had surgery and physically was not able to go out and get those signatures. Additionally, I think the reality is everybody in Northglenn, everybody across the world is busy living their everyday lives and isn't going to be home or available to sign a petition when somebody might be available to take it out. I shared in her concern that process, the way that it was set up, she was set up to fail, right? She wasn't going to be getting resolution. And so when I was elected in 2017, one of my big priorities was changing the way that we do that program and almost pushing our community and our staff to almost rethink how we are responsive to different issues. And one of the results that came out of that process was the No Need for Speed program. So now a resident can identify that there is an issue, that they perceive that there is an issue on their street. They can download a petition online and get signatures from 5 households. And they count as one of those households, so it's actually only 4 households. They'll bring that petition to City Hall and we'll conduct a speed study. We'll host a neighborhood meeting for their neighbors to talk about what's going on their street, and then make a determination as to what they would like to see, what changes they would like to see implemented on their street, right? So in that one experience with that woman, with the resident on Melody Drive, led to this major transformative process in the way that we do business. And I was really proud to have been a part of leading that change and working to build a more responsive Northland. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lukman-Haramusa?
Thank you. What do I bring to City Council? Well, I've been fortunate enough to have the last few months as on-the-job training, so I think that's going to add a lot of value during the next couple of years moving forward. I've put a lot of work. I'm a very hard worker. I've put a lot of hours trying to understand everything that's happening from the city, and most importantly, one of the first things that I did was boots on the ground, get to know people, talk to people. I think that is so important, and I think that is something that can really help move our city forward. We need to have these conversations, and we need to be able to hear our residents and what their needs, fears, concerns, accommodations, whatever great things they have to say about the city, all of those things, we need to make sure that we can hear that. I also am an entrepreneur. I've owned my own business along with my husband for the last 24 years, and that's given me a lot of experience with team building, managing teams, understanding how teams work together, and I think that is a skill that I bring to council because we are a diverse group of people on council with differing opinions at some point. And I think it's important to be able to collaborate with each other and get to the root of what it is the city needs. It's not what we, as one person out of many, need, but what is it that our residents in our community need? It has given me a lot of experience with that, and I think team building is very important to understand how that works. I'm very passionate about following through for residents as well. I've only been on council a few short months, but I've already really put in a lot of effort into making sure that residents' voices and concerns are heard. I'm sure the city manager has an email box full of emails from me right now. So I think that's important, and it's something that I will continue to do to advocate for you who live in Northglenn. This is my city. I love it as well. I want to see it succeed and prosper and be a safe place that everybody enjoys living in and can continue to want to live here because that is important. Other things, I'm invested. I'm absolutely invested in everything. I bring a lot of diversity to council as well. I feel that I can bridge many different areas in terms of being a person of color, having a daughter who's a police officer, having a son with a disability, owning a business. All of these things, I think, help add to the diverse dialogues that we have when problems arise or concerns or things that we need to vote on. I always keep in the back of my mind my background. I know what it's like to actually be homeless. My mother was a single mother, and we slept outside for a while, and we slept in condemned buildings. So again, the diversity that I bring and the passion that I bring, I will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, who is, by the way, not my cousin, but it's a good handle to have, is it not?
It is, and so some of the unique skills that I bring, I've lived in many cities after I graduated from school in a small school in Kansas with a very technical degree, something that the Northglenn, or the Rotary is pursuing right now for scholarships, and so I'm glad to have that. And some of the other things, I'm median age for the city here, and so I think bring some new ideas and some new youth to the city council, and just to harp on a few things that some of our candidates here said tonight. Mr. Montour said we do have diversity issues, and when I look at city council, it's very apparent that it's 100% female. It is not reflective of our city, of our makeup, in no shape or form. And also, as Mr. Bromley said, there's a very lack of diversity of ideas from the other side of the aisle. And that's been very apparent in some major decisions that city council has made, such as Prop CC from a few years ago, where basically the state, or us residents, were going to forfeit our Colorado tax return so that CDOT could pursue bridges to nowhere type programs. And obviously that got voted down by the entire state, and in Adams County it was 66 to 33. And yet somehow our city council voted 6-1 in favor of it. And so there's truly a lack of diversity of ideas and conversation that is being had on city council. And so I hope to bring that to our city council for Ward 1. And back to you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much. So something you said, Mr. Jaramillo, was talking about your campaigning process and the door-to-door. So this next question will be along that line. While you were campaigning, what issue has been a common theme from the Northglenn citizens that you'd like to bring forward? Would you like me to repeat that?
No.
Okay.
So I definitely heard speeding, no need for speed program. And so I supplied that information for our constituents, our neighbors. Also, you hear code enforcement, you'll hear that a lot. I've also heard, homelessness task force, of course, I've already mentioned that one. And you see where it's more apparent, and it is in Ward 2, where I live. So it's happening on 120th, I-25, and also on the west side of Washington. Sometimes that part of Ward 2, people don't realize that's also Ward 2. But I have a lot of friends that live over there, and that's something they express to me. that they see, in Webster Lake and everything that's going on there when they take their families, and I want to be able to provide, when I do go to these public places and I do see people that are dealing with, like, they're our neighbors too, like they're living here. So I want to try to help them, help them help themselves. And really that's through, we have programming, so the Homelessness Task Force, they have places where people can go and wash their clothes, apply for jobs, and seek mental health counseling at the Reach Center. And also, when the temperature goes below 32 degrees, they can get free motel vouchers. So this is, seeing these people as people, and we want to be able to help them if they want to help themselves. So that's a program that, people are like, what can we really do about that? But there is something that's being done, and I got to thank the city manager's office. They're doing a fantastic job on that, and I think that it could be a model that other cities can utilize as well. I realize that the big city, Denver, is pushing people out this way, and it's coming in waves, and there's got to be some way to help them, and I'm so thankful that we have a city that has been proactive, that sees that, but also from what I've heard too is that, I've heard it from people that sometimes they didn't feel safe, and we want to continue to keep Northglenn as a truly safe community and keep retaining quality officers in here. And I know that it's going to be very competitive, but we have to be able to rise to the occasion. And also, you hear people that just want Northglenn to be a place where their kids can go to the park and feel safe. And when the lights come on, the street lights come on, they can go home just like we did back in the day. Want it to be like that, how everybody grew up here in Northglenn.
Thank you. Mr. Remberg.
In going around and talking to the people, like my constituencies or potential constituents, they have a lot to say again about the speeding, especially right after school. I live off of on 116th Drive, so then there's like 116th Place, and people try to, not go over the speed bumps. So they'll go through my neighborhood and they'll speed really, really fast. And a lot of people that I've talked to have suggested as much that they don't want to send their kids out. That is a really, really big problem. I've also heard a lot of people who are tired of seeing the same faces in city council and the same ideas. And I can't agree more. I've seen the same faces on the same newspaper since I was a kid, and I see the same names. I constantly hear this, like, the complaint that policy here is reactionary rather than being actively trying to solve things. I would agree that our institution, our governmental institution here in the city, waits for it to be a problem and then addresses it. And that's a really, really big problem. I also recently talked to an architect, city planner major from CU Denver, and he is appalled that we are using the Carl Dairy Farms land in that specific way. He says that, if you want to be, or his big concern is if, Northglenn wants to be in the sun, wants to be a city among other cities, the first among equals, then maybe we should be redeveloping our plan. We were just talking about with the renewal authority, the economic renewal authority here in Northglenn. And they were boasting about getting a 5 below and a DD discount. People aren't really happy with, the economic incentives given to small businesses and how they're giving them away to like these discount places. Like there was a proposition to have a Trader Joe's here, and they went to city council or whatever, and they're like, you don't have the demographic. We're not going to put a place here. people are upset with the choices that they have, with the limited ability to grow in an economic sense, and to be like, wow, like I can actually live here. It's the same thing with young families. The median age in Northglenn is 32. A lot of young families have told me that they are in serious trouble. They're scared about their prospects of living in a city like this. And that's really concerning, and that's really sad. Thank you.
A friend of mine is a commander in the Broomfield Police Department, and during COVID, when we had reduced traffic because of the circumstances, speeding increased dramatically. Their traffic citations went up 50%, and they know that they didn't even make a dent in the speeding. Now that we have the traffic back, we still have the speeders, and it clearly is an issue. I don't know I'd want to be a traffic cop in today's environment, trying to figure out how to manage that. Next up, we have, Mr. Bromley.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Walker. Well, I can say that the city of Northland does have significant issues. I'm glad that the city council actually did go forward on some of the items that I pointed out during my 2019 mayor run, when I informed the city council that I actually faced homelessness once as well with my family and stuff in California when I was just started a business in the shipyards. Here in Northglenn, homelessness is still on the rise. Over the 1979 tunnel, I always see like 5 to 10 people actually homeless hanging out in that tunnel, having a party, doing whatever they want to do, and this is on a constant, regular basis. And we do need to actually do a little bit more to try to actually create stability in housing, incomes, and jobs to get these homeless people secure again in believing in the American system, that they can actually recreate their lives and get off that street, because all that was created under the Obama administration when he started shutting down businesses. Biden did the same thing. He started shutting down businesses again, and this is actually an ongoing problem that keeps creating homelessness and displacement. We started bringing in people from other countries. We started letting them come across the borders unchecked, unstopped, which means they just filter into our communities. And then we also took all the Afghan refugees, and we're going to get 400 of them here in Northglenn, apparently, according to some of the information that was put out. And that means that could cause displacement for U.S. citizens and Americans, creating the same homeless conditions that were started in California years ago. Now, that's just some of the problems that are still going on here, and we still have to get answers to that, so we can actually supply the need for all those people to receive housing, fair incomes, and jobs, so they can actually survive here in Northland, that have all relocated over here because they were looking for help and stuff. So it was great that we actually created a program to try to help them, but now it's going to be over-inundated with a lot more individuals than we actually had initially planned on. The other things that most citizens talk about is speeding. They want more law enforcement. They want our police to be more involved with the citizens of our community. And I don't think going with CRU is the right direction. I don't think trying to restart the mental institutionalization is a good quality, because President Kennedy ended that program a long time ago, because a lot of people were not insane. They were completely sane, and they were fully capable of living their own lives. And I think that we're going in the wrong direction with that, and we just need to fund our police more. We need to supply our police more, and we need to get more speed humps out there to reduce speeders and stuff like that. And that's just some of the issues that are going on. There's a whole list of it on my website, votebromley.com, and you can read more about a lot of the things that are going on in the city of Northland. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bromley. I'm going to repeat that question one more time. While you were campaigning, what issue has been a common theme from Northglenn citizens that you'd like to bring forward? And our next speaker is Jenny Wilford, please.
Thank you, and thank you for repeating the question. It was a nice refresh there. As I've been talking to residents in Ward 4, as well as across the city, there are a number of things that continually come up. The first is folks are really interested in what's happening over at the marketplace, and what was happening with the theater and some of the new businesses that are coming in. There's a lot of things that are in the works, and unfortunately things do take time to get new businesses in there, but In addition to the Five Below and the DD's discount, we do have a new boutique called Painted Tree Boutiques that's going to be coming in over in the Sports Authority building. So it'll be nice to have that filled up with such a unique marketplace again. In addition to the marketplace, I've heard a lot about homelessness as well as the condition of many of our parks, including Croak Reservoir. Obviously, speeding has come up as well, as you've heard from other candidates. And in particular, around homelessness, I think this one's a really tough one, right? Because folks see homelessness and their initial reaction is, well, I don't want to see it. And I want to, why can't you just move people along? And the reality is that as a city, as a community, we can't just shuffle people from Northland to Thornton to Westminster or from, Denver to another place, because we're just creating this cycle, which is sending people and moving them around from park to park and never actually addressing the issue or the problem. And so we've taken a different approach in terms of providing case management. And we've seen some pretty incredible payoff in that investment in terms of folks actually getting the resources that they need to get them to be off the streets, right? To lift themselves by their bootstraps. And I think that as we continue in that work with the crisis response unit, I think it's going to continue to pay dividends for this community in terms of improving our public spaces as well as ensuring that we're caring for our unhoused neighbors as well. In addition to homelessness, I've met a lot of new young families who, as I said, are new to Northglenn. There's been a tremendous shift, at least in Ward 4, and I can imagine across the rest of the community, where folks, unfortunately, are moving out of Northglenn, aging out and moving in, wanting to downsize. And we have new young families like mine that are moving in and are very excited about this new recreation center, senior center, as well as theater, and all that it brings to the table. And I'll stop there. I know that I've got just a few minutes left, but I think, for every negative thing I'm hearing on the door, there are a lot of positives as well, and people excited about our future.
Thank you. You can tell there's not one single issue, that's for sure. Ms. Lukman-Haramosa.
Thank you very much. A lot of similarities to what Jenny just talked about as well, since we are in the same ward and we have the same constituents. A lot of the same problems. I can summarize it in 3 things: the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what I hear from residents. So it's a lot of mixed things that are going on, but I would say one of the top 2 things, and one of them I think falls under the umbrella of safety. Safety is the thing that I hear most about what residents are concerned about. So safety in their neighborhoods, safety in their parks, safety in the tunnels, safety on their streets with speeding, and so forth, and the rising crime rate. As we had a council meeting on Monday night, Deputy Chief mentioned that crime has gone up 60% in Northglenn. And that to me is very alarming. So I understand and I can empathize when our residents are saying very strongly that, they're afraid of their kids playing out on the streets and cars speeding by and not having any regard for the children that are in the street or the speed limits. And then homelessness is definitely a big issue, and as Jenny mentioned, it's a problem with many layers. There's not just one easy solution. There's many layers of homelessness. There's people who are newly homeless, maybe have a car but don't have a job, or in between, newly homeless. But then there's some people who are a little bit further into it. Again, many layers: drug abuse, substance abuse, mental health issues. There are many things that have to be addressed to solve this problem, and I think I'm very proactive. I heard reactive. I will say that one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and my motto is do something. I live by that motto, do something. So we can complain about the issues or talk about it, but it's time to come up with solutions and stop talking about it. And I think that's what we are progressing towards on our city council right now. Some of the things that we're doing with the CRU program, just recently I found out It's led by an incredible human being, by the way, that a person who was experiencing homelessness and was very familiar face in some of our parks has now moved into a residential treatment program and transitional housing. So those are the kinds of lasting changes that we need to see in our city to make sure that it's not just a Band-Aid, because, as Jenny mentioned before, we can move them around, we can give them a notice to not camp here, they're gonna move to a different park or a different area or come in from different areas. And we need help. We need to bring in more regional help. We cannot assess or address this problem as a small city by ourselves, so we need more county help. Those are the biggest concerns. Safety, speeding is another big thing, which we are addressing through the No Need for Speed program as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker.
Thank you. One of the issues that come up, and as Mr. Walker said earlier, we are not very far apart, and I don't think the city is in what we agree are the problems, and we're not so partisan on that and what needs to be done. And so I hope there's some of those things we can accomplish. But one of the other things that came up too was bringing the community or the government to the people. It's a very stuffy process to come down to the council chambers and stand at a podium and state your case for your 3 minutes. It's not the way things are done in 2021, and so it needs to be, our city council needs to be more in tune with what society is. I know I listed multiple ways for my constituents to contact me through phone, text, or my address is even listed so they can come talk to me face to face. And I think, some of our most active citizens and boards are places that are not held at City Hall, such as our Homelessness Task Force that's held at a church. And so it can be less threatening, it's less stuffy, and I think those are things that we need to be bringing to the people, and that's something they've asked for too. Back to you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Montour.
I'm going out and talking to the community members in Ward 2. There was a plethora of complaints, from speeding to the Mount Everest speed bumps on Claude Court, to the lack of speed bumps on 112th Place. When you go around the curve, the speed bumps disappear. We talked about and I have to agree with Mr. Renberg, the status quo of passing the torch. From city councilman to mayor to city councilman, from husband to wife. Those things need to end. I also heard from community members about the access to city government facilities. I was talking to a family. She was a single mother, 4 boys. And she talked about being able to access the rec center. And she said, I don't have $1,200 a year for my kids to go to the rec center. I can't do that. In Northglenn, there's a gym that you could pay $120 a year to attend. Why are we not servicing our community? I also talked to constituents that said, when I go to the city government, I go to various places, why do I feel like the outsider in my own city? Why am I displaced? My neighbor up the block, he said, Gerald, I own a construction company. I tried to advertise, I tried to talk to city. No one can speak my language. Why? We're not a monolingual community. We're not a monolingual government. When I went out and I talked to the constituents in the community, I had a resident ask me, why doesn't our police force in Northland look like me? I asked that question to our chief mate, because when I looked at the ethnic breakdown of our police department, they were at 87% white, 13% policemen of color. And specifically, I asked, how many Native Americans do you have on the force? He said 0. And then, to me, had the audacity to say, can you help me recruit some? Why isn't the government doing that? So our city government needs to be reflective of our community in the ideals that we bring to the community and to the city government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montour. So the next question kind of prompted me to think way back when I first moved up to this community in the mid-'80s. And you had a great advocate here in Northglenn. Her name was Jane Davies. And Jane explained that Northglenn was built with a vision, and its size isn't something that was unplanned. It really expected to be 40,000, 45,000, whatever we're going to end up when Carl's farm is completed. But nonetheless, there was always this vision of what Northglenn would be like and where the quality came into play. So thinking about that for just a minute, in a city that is surrounded and built out, or almost, what kind of sustainability or growth factors do you think should be explored?
Mr. Walker?
It is, in fact. Thank you, Mr.
Well, I believe that we have
Oh,
organizations.
excuse me, just a minute. I apologize, Mr. Jaramillo. I think our next presenter is Mr. Remberg.
Thank you very much.
Would you like me to repeat that question?
Oh, please.
Since I stumbled there a little bit. In a city that's surrounded and built out, what kind of sustainability or growth factors do you think should be explored?
Northglenn is a very small city, and a lot of people think that that is a great weakness, but that is obviously a great strength that people don't understand. Look at Thornton, for example. Thornton is so sprawled out that all of their projects require huge amounts of maintenance, and all of these resources are scattered about and all these things. Northglenn is free from this. We are free to move from point to point in again, this, great vision, this, city on the hill. What's happening with the Carl Dairy Farms, I think, is a pretty good idea in the sense that we're bringing more like townhomes, more affordable housing for people, more retail space, economic viability for the future, but also the fact that we haven't really future-proofed our city in like terms of infrastructure, of drainage when it rains a lot, especially in the face of climate change. People have asked me about traffic and how Northglenn is not ready for even more. We need to future-proof our city to create sustainable living so that our community can grow. There's 10 acres left in Northglenn to develop, and that's nothing. When you talk about the Urban Renewal Authority, their main focus is repurpose, reuse, and to basically take what exists, revamp it a little bit, give it a new spin, and hope it works out. And I don't know if that's the best idea. That's the most viable. Maybe for Northglenn it is, but there's great potential in this city. Ways that we can truly help people and allow people, again, to participate in the great social stratification that happens in society. There's a great, again, opportunity to go and fix our small city, make it really, really pretty, make it stand out among others, and allow, again, for greater economic development. We need the city to not just be future-proof, just, in terms of infrastructure or any of these things, but to allow for other people, young families and young people with ideas to come here and feel a part of something greater than themselves. And that the people here that live here can also be like, wow, like Northglenn looks good. It looks better than it did 20 years ago. Again, I've lived here for now, 17 years of my life, and it's looked pretty much the same. And I think we need to change that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Mr. Bromley.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. In a city that is surrounded and built out, what kind of sustainability or growth factors do you think should be explored?
Well, Northglenn is basically stuck to the size that it is. The chance that it had was a few years ago, quite a bit actually, and the city just didn't move on it when it should have in order to expand its horizons. Now, There is a plan in the city of Northland where they're thinking of trying to create mixed zoning use for the housing and stuff like that, but that's not exactly what the residents that actually moved here want. They like their single-family homes. And trying to turn those single-family homes into multifamily dwellings in the same neighborhoods may not actually be the best way to go about it. And I'm thinking that the city of Northglenn will just have to basically build itself based on quality, kind of lifestyle. As basically Thornton and Westminster are the ones that are still building single-family living communities. And they're making those communities a lot larger than what Northland has available. So we have already used up our resources. We already got our population, and our population is sustainable into the future as far as it's required. And our city doesn't need to become home to what the Denver Housing Authority wants or Neuro wants. It can be what the people of Northland want it to be. And it troubles me when the city of Northland on the council was deciding that they don't have to ask the voters how we want our housing community to be zoned. I think it's up to the voters to decide that, because some voters want to change it a little bit, but they don't necessarily actually own the house. They don't actually necessarily pay for other people to live here or anything like that, or even own a business or even run real estate. Now, the people that do run real estate, they actually like our single-family homes. They actually like the community that they wanted to live in, and they would be definitely pretty distraught if the houses across the street all became multifamily units, and they're the only single-family house left on that block. They'd basically be forced to sell because they'd be having to look for a new place to live for the community that they were hoping to find here in Northland. Because Northland was established as a single-family living community for the most part, and some of the multifamily living units that we have already built in Northland, I would have to say are substandard, not actually up to full quality of life that our residents should actually have. So I think basically we're looking at Northland as the Cherry Creek of the North kind of deal, because we have more in common with Cherry Creek than we actually do with cities like Denver, Thornton, Westminster, other localities. And the biggest thing that we can do is improve our businesses, our jobs, and our incomes. Those are actually priorities that we should actually build on for Northland's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wilford.
Thank you, Mark. First, I just want to really quickly, I guess, add a little bit of clarity to what was just shared. The city of Northland is not moving forward at this time, allowing single-family homes to be demolished and multifamily homes to be built. That's not where we are right now as a community. In fact, that's not even a conversation that's being had. So I just want to clear that up and make sure that residents aren't concerned about that. You know, when we're thinking about our city as being built out and thinking about, you know, what we want the future to look like, I would say a couple of things. One is, you know, from my perspective, redevelopment is our biggest opportunity, right? Looking at blighted properties, working with building owners who are ready to take the next steps and rethink what their space could be utilized as. That being said, I really believe that in the next 20 years, Northglenn should be thinking a bit more about density and how any time we are redeveloping an area, is there an opportunity to add housing, right? So for example, at the Carl's Dairy Farm, that's a new development, right? But there's a whole bunch of new housing options that are coming in, including senior housing, which is something that our community is absolutely lacking. Additionally, there will be retail space, which is important because that will expand our tax base and ensure that our city is able to function and continue to deliver high-quality services to our residents. And so I guess the other thing I'll just share is that in addition to redevelopment opportunities, the city is also moving towards the second phase of our Civic Center master plan. So the rec center, senior center, and theater where you're sitting right now was phase one. We have a really exciting phase two about to kick off in the next year, where we're looking at adding retail space with some living units above, right? So those could be condos or some level of attainable housing. which is important, right? When we think about the small areas that we have and our ability to build community with the folks that are living in those spaces, activate them, and again, build out our tax base. So I think that's really exciting. And I think the third thing I'll just quickly share is the city's in the process of building out our new comprehensive plan. And this is a plan that is being developed with residents at the table to really think and talk about what do we want the future of our community to look like and what does growth look like. And so if you are listening this evening and have any thoughts about the future of Northland or what your vision may be, this is an opportunity for you to get involved and share your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Ms. Lukeman, Hiramosa.
Thank you. A lot of what I have to say does echo what Jenny just mentioned as well, being that we are both on council at this time and having a lot of the same discussions. We do have a big challenge here in Northglenn because we are landlocked. We don't really have an opportunity to grow outside of our little walls, so to speak. So we really do have to look at how we can repurpose or redevelop areas that already exist. And there are some exciting developments happening. As Jenny mentioned, Carl's Farm, I think, is going to be a super important one. 64 acres of mixed housing, including condos, single, multifamily housing units, and housing for seniors as well. So there are some opportunities there as well. And of course, the next phase of the Civic Center plan will also bring in more diverse opportunities for mixed use, mixed housing, more businesses, I think is very important. We have to work with what we have here in the city. That's the reality. It's something that we have to face, and we have to be very careful about how we grow, because when we increase density in any areas, of course, there could be unintended or unexpected consequences. We have to think about the infrastructure. Can it support these new housing developments? Does our aging water treatment facility center, can it support it? The roads that we hear the road conditions are in need of repair and such. So I think that we have to be very smart about how we grow. To echo what Jenny said, no, the City Council is not planning on just tearing down homes without input from the community, and the comprehensive plan input is extremely important. We will and need to get input from our residents on what they see as their vision for the community as well, and what areas they see as concern. The redevelopment of the Northland Marketplace, I think, there's very exciting things about to happen. I know it's been slow. We've also just come out of one of the most, well, we haven't even come out of it. I can't even say that. We are in the middle of an unprecedented time, in the middle of a pandemic. We've had to deal with businesses shutting down and closing for good, and businesses that are just struggling right now to reopen, and then trying to draw in new businesses. So maybe some people might not feel that Dee Dee's Discount or Five Below is great, but you know what? It's filling up that center. And with this potential new client we have coming in, for example, if that deal gets done, that center will be at 90% capacity. That's more than neighboring cities. 70% capacity is considered good. So in the middle of a pandemic, to accomplish those things, fingers crossed, I think is going to add some revitalization, some new jobs, keep those jobs. When our median age is 33, we do have to look at this. And when rent is $2,900 and the median home is $473,000, we have to think about that as well. How are people going to afford to live here? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, please.
Thank you. As we talk about sustainability and what kind of the community wants, I know that there's some hot button topics that are being discussed at City Hall right now, and doing trendy things like investing in electric cars. And I think there could be better usage of some of the other candidates said, of redeveloping our businesses here and helping them get back on their feet. Investing in something trendy that is a fad idea right now, that no one really wants to talk about the fossil fuels it takes to make an electric car, let alone, that's a finite resource. We don't own a lot of it. And some of the people that do, it's nationalized, and they're not very friendly to the United States. And no one else even wants to talk about on the back end of what it takes to destroy a battery pack from a car. And so while it's all good and great, and electric cars will have some of their uses in the future, I do not believe it is the future. And I think we could be better using that money to support our businesses, to help redevelop the places that bring in tax dollars and redevelop for our community. And so instead of investing in the trendy ideas and the propaganda behind what is the fad right now. And so back to you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Montour.
When I look in my community, I don't see a community that is one age bracket. I see a community that is built of multiple age brackets, and where and how are they being serviced and what is being provided. COVID shut down a lot of businesses. Mine was one of them. We need to sustain the businesses we currently have within Northglenn. How do we offer them, rebuild them, make them want to stay, not leave our city? Not so that you drive down the street and you see vacant storefronts, but you see thriving storefronts. How do we bring affordable housing into play so that today's market, you know, my neighbor sold their house. They got almost $200,000 more than what they paid. But then they turned around and paid almost $300,000 in a new home, more than what they've made. So that we need to figure out how do we bring housing into our community that is able to service our community. We need senior home houses. We need low-income houses. We need houses that are going to service our community. How do we do that? We also need a resource and a facility available that our homeless are able to access. Mental health, job, all of these services that service, not be react, but proactiveness. I also feel that our city government needs to move towards the electrical type car. We need to bring solar into our homes. We need to pull away from fossil fuel and be reliant on fossil fuel and be more reliant on what we have. We need to look at what we have in our community as a whole. What is best for our community, not best for what city government is. How do we do that? We come back and we ask our community, what is it that they see and what do they need? I paid a $360 water bill the other day for 1 month. How does that sustain me and my community? That it doesn't work. How do we now take our community, we grow our community, sustain our community, and bring people from the outside of our community into our community so that we grow within? I've seen complexes where Jenny was talking about that there are storefronts on the bottom and affordable housing on top. These are the things we need to sustain our communities so that we grow. Yes, we're within a boundary, but we can still grow from within.
Thank you, Mr. Montour. Mr. Jaramillo.
Thank you. When I first ran in 2019, sustainability was a big deal for me as well, and it still is. And that's because I did see the need for our aging infrastructure. You know, that's when we had the 50th anniversary of Northglenn. And it's if you live in Ward 2 where I live, that's why I'm thankful to say that now we have new pipes that are in our neighborhood now that can deal with, everybody who lives here and that's going to be living in Ward 2 north of us. And I'm thankful that that's in place because that's going to help us really address that need. I do agree with solar energy, if there would be a program that we could put along with the city, because you do get those robocalls. I know I'm not the only one who receives them that is talking about getting solar energy and stuff. I believe if the city had some kind of program that would make that more obtainable and not feel like, you don't want to give out your information over the phone and things like that. You want people that you trust. And I want to be able to say that I'd be a trustful person for you when you're seeking those kind of, what would I call that? Oh my God, like not in things that people want for their public good. That's what we expect. And also, I do see that there is been successes with NERA. You see that with, larger companies that have come in like AutoZone and Save a Lot, which is great, but you also see the small companies, where people go and, they have beauty salons, they have restaurants that people are going to, and there has to be a balance of businesses that can provide plenty of jobs for people here in Northglenn, but also those small mom and pop shops, So there needs to be a balance of that to be sustainable and to bring those jobs to Northglenn. But also, that's through NURA, and I'm glad that I know somebody that's here is part of NURA, and I can look to them and ask these questions and learn more from her. So it's really aligning yourself with people who know how to get the job done, who listen to you, know what steps need to be taken, and follow through and make it happen. And that's what I'm basing my entire campaign about, is listening and acting upon it. And you'll see the results, and that's almost all my time, but feel free if you have any questions and you live here in Ward 2 or anywhere else in Northglenn, feel free to bring your questions to me at jmichaeljaramillo@gmail.com.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. So do you all have your track shoes on? We're going to change things up here a little bit because we don't want you here till midnight, and I know the audience probably won't stay till midnight. So with that said, I'm going to combine some questions. I'm going to reduce our lightning round a little bit, but I think we can still get through the crux of the questions that I think are important for the voters to hear. So with that, let's start with Mr. Bromley. Mr. Bromley, I'm going to pose this as a two-question. I've got to flip the page as I ask it. Are you in favor of borrowing money to improve the city's infrastructure and capital projects? Oh, Joanna, let's make this a 1 minute. Thank you. So 1 minute, it will be brief. Are you in favor of borrowing money to improve the city's infrastructure and capital projects, such as new facilities, that being perhaps a new city hall as part of phase 2 of the Civic Center project?
No, I'm actually not for just borrowing money haphazardly. We already built 2 buildings. We built the Justice Center and this new building right here, the Community Center. From my information, we could have actually got this Community Center for free a few years ago and stuff like that, because somebody else is going to actually build it for us. And sometimes the city council doesn't actually pursue correct alternatives, and they just been raising taxes on its citizens because of socialism is on the rise, and some of the partisan politics is not exactly congruent with actually what the citizens of Northland actually expect or even want. Even though the city just wants to add more housing and rezone the city of Northland, I don't think it's always wise to actually do that. But if there was an actual valid reason for it, I might actually consider it in the future. But as it stands right now, no, I don't think that's the way we should actually be going about it.
Ms. Wilford?
Thank you for the question. I'm open to exploring different options in order to fund our infrastructure and make investments in our community. I will say, I think that perhaps you mentioned City Hall. In that project in particular, we are planning on paying cash for a new City Hall, so there's not necessarily the need to borrow money in that particular project, but there could be down the road for other phases of our Civic Center master plan, and I'm not opposed to ruling it out in order to continue to provide the services and the direction that our community wants to go.
Ms. Lukman-Haramosa?
Thank you. I would say cash first if we can. So the new City Hall will be built with cash. That is the plan. But of course, there are things that maybe are unpredictable or unforeseen that we may need to consider other options. For example, our aging infrastructure and major repairs that are probably coming up with water treatment facilities, waste treatment facilities, and so forth. So those are things to consider. I'm definitely, I would lean more towards, if we have the funds, that we should use those first before we borrow funds as well. But again, it would just depend on the situation. I don't feel like it's a black or white question, but cash first if possible.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
I'd be only in favor of it in emergency type procedures where we need it, like the force. I don't believe the Force A main was used with money, but if we had emergency repairs like that we needed to do, I would be in favor of that. But for the most part, I would say no. but especially for infrastructures like flashy projects, like trying to upgrade to the electric vehicles and all the burden that adds to that. But as far as new facilities, if there is a legitimate need and the community feels it, and I think the voters should have a say in that also, then it would be kind of on an issue-by-issue basis.
Thank you. Mr. Montour.
I think that the options are out there. First, I would like to see if our reserve is there so that we're self-sustainable. Second, I believe that looking at options of financial restability is great, because then we're going out and we're establishing relationships and partnerships in a collaborative type of environment with other entities or other cities that brings a hand-in-hand type of environment to Northglenn. When we do that, that creates a collaborative decision where one community is helping another community grow. When those things happen, the ability for them to want to help our city is there. If we push that away and we don't look at options, how detrimental is that to our city? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jaramillo.
Thank you. We do have to balance a budget, just like the city has to balance a budget, just like we do, and just like companies that we own or companies that we work for. We all have to balance a budget, and thankfully we have people that work for the city and the city manager's office. We can, when we are elected, we can refer to these people who basically know more about what's happening here in Northglenn. What opportunities are there for more tax money to come in to pay for these projects. So thankfully, there's going to be some more tax money coming in once more homes are built. So that may mean more revenue. Well, obviously, it will mean more of that for the city. But I believe that we have to weigh out our options and make sure that borrowing money is not the only way that we're going to go about it. We have to weigh our options.
Thank you. Mr. Renberg.
In studying finance and economics, this question comes up all the time. This is the great question of finance, is how am I going to get the capital to do the things that I want to do? When interest rates are as low as they are at 0.25, so 25 basis points on 1%, that's insanely cheap. That's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. That's pennies on the dollar. That's an opportunity that I think people should be willing to explore. Where paying cash is definitely a good idea, having the liquidity to use this money in other ways is also something that we should consider as a city. And also, how are we going to finance it? Through bond, issuing or whatever, which is what a city does. And then what is the coupon and all these things? Or maybe you can make it so that citizens could donate and they could own a portion of the capital which they create, that creates wealth. I think those borrowing money is something that we can explore as a community.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to the next question because I've heard some ideas already. Let me just address this question, and the candidate will be Jenny Wilford. As you may already know, code compliance by residents is a source of citywide chronic concern. Give us some other ideas that we may not have heard today that could address this issue.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to think before I just jump in here.
Fair enough, fair enough. This will be a 1 minute.
Okay, all right. I think the thing that's really important to recognize with code enforcement is that a lot of times we don't know what's behind what's behind the door, right? What's going on inside of that household that is leading, whether their weeds are tall or there's another issue of noncompliance. We don't know what's going on there, right? And so one of the things that we're hopeful with the new crisis response unit and some of the other conversations that we're having at City Council is that we can almost rethink we can almost rethink how we're approaching those different issues, and reaching out to folks to find out what the issue is and if there's a way that we can help them solve it, right? So you think, for example, you know, and one of our seniors is having a tough time mowing her lawn, and so her lawn's going to be ridden with weeds, but she can't physically get out and do it. And so some folks just need a little extra help, and I think that any opportunities we have to explore how we can address that and bring equity into the conversation, I think is a good solution.
Thanks very much. Ms. Lukman-Haramosa.
Thank you. Again, I have to echo what Jenny says. A big part of what we're hoping the CRU program can do is help maybe mitigate some of those issues that we're not quite aware of in terms of what's happening with code violations, and that could be many things. Of course, there's weeds is one, there's too many cars in the area, blocking driveways, and so forth, or disputes between neighbors over weeds or unkept yards. And so those are possible things that the CRU unit can help resolve and dig deeper into what the issue is. So is it somebody who's having difficulty aging in place because they can no longer maintain their yard or remove the items from the yard? So that's something maybe that the resource or the program director for the CRU program can help connect them with resources in the community, either having volunteers go and help them mow their yards or help haul away trash or things like that, or have some means for them to get assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker.
I completely echo that sentiment, and I think we already have that infrastructure in place to help seniors or citizens who are being fined for their lawns and have weed or overgrowth problems, because we already have the snowstormers program, and that program sits dormant for 6 months of the year. So we already have volunteers who are willing to pick up tools and go help their neighbors who need it, and I don't believe picking weeds is any different than removing the snow from the people who are unable to do it or are elderly. They've deserved that. And so some of the I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Montour.
I believe that code enforcement needs assistance. We need to develop programs within the city that help. My candidate here, the other candidate here, talked about programs that are in effect. I've never seen them. I live across the street from senior citizens that have never received those services. Those things need to be done. They need to be done effectively, and they need to be done with validity. When I look at our community and code enforcement also has to be consistent. It's not consistent. When they're going out, I have a neighbor that works 2 jobs, single parent. She works in the day and works in the evening. Her grass gets pretty tall, but the city doesn't come. They come and give her a ticket. It's not reactive. The city needs to be proactive in how we help our community, not how we ding or look after our community as getting them or collecting funds from them, but helping them.
Mr. Jaramillo.
So from what I've heard from my constituents when I've been walking around Ward 2, is most of the code enforcement violations are from people who are renting, that they're not being held accountable by their homeowners. So I feel like that's the problem, for the most part. And I would like to open up to create something that would hold those people accountable, whether it's the renter and not or somehow find a way to make that happen. But I had this conversation with Mr. Walker to my right. We had this conversation in the green room about, you said the program where they remove the snow, about doing that also. And that's great that we have people that are able-bodied to assist people who possibly are the original owners here in Northglenn who may not be able to do that, be able to upkeep their yards. So I see that's a possibility, and I'm open to that too if I'm elected.
Thank you. Mr. Renberg.
I didn't grow up in a very affluent, household. I was never well-to-do. And my mom worked a job in the evening. She went to school, while also raising us, while we went to school. And there were times where, we couldn't mow the lawn, or we didn't even have access to a lawnmower. And the city comes and knocks on, your door and like, you're not being a part, you're not helping society, or somebody's complained, Without taking in regard the circumstances of which we were all dealing with. We are renters. Our circumstances are just as equal as everybody else's. And I think that if code enforcement, is to take a more proactive stance than they ought to. But also, we talk about racial, discrepancies being used, like people who are racist using city ordinances to attack somebody that they don't like.
Thank you, Mr. Ember. Mr. Bromley.
The city of Northland is actually quite an understanding city, and you don't need a CRU unit to actually help out the city. You just need good employees within the city that are willing to actually speak with the residents and actually provide that information or that help that actually puts the residents in control of their own life and stuff. Law enforcement is actually where we should be putting our investment in, because I know from people that I worked with, one of the people that was my boss, he's now the head of the Department of Public Safety in the state of Utah. They have produced excellent police officers who are actually trained in sociology, psychology, and they can actually help people in the community. Just because they have a gun on the side of their hip does not mean that they're a threat. It means that they're there to help. And that's the only reason that they're there. And if we put all that resources of the CRU back into law enforcement, we can actually create a lot better control over the city itself, and we can actually help out the citizens of Northland a lot better, because the Northland people do actually do a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Bromley. All right, I'm going to do a couple of lightning questions. Joanna, you don't need to time this. So this is a yes or no. All right? So we're going to start with maybe one of the more interesting questions that popped up here. Should the city implement a city-sanctioned homeless campsite? Yes or no, Mrs. Luqman-Hermosa?
City-sanctioned homeless campsite?
Correct. City-sanctioned homeless campsite.
Maybe.
Fair enough. One answer. Mr. Walker?
I would have to say, depending on the circumstances.
I'll go in order as I recognize him. Mr. Enberg?
No.
Mr. Montour?
Yes.
Mr. Jaramillo?
No.
Mr. Bromley?
No.
Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. This will be a yes or no, or maybe. Should Northglenn take steps, however small, to address gun control? Mr. Walker?
No.
Mr. Ember?
Yes.
Mr. Montour?
Yes.
Jaramillo?
I feel we can
Yes or
truly
no?
address. Yes or no? Okay.
Or maybe.
I feel yes, there is something, but not saying gun control is like taking rid of guns. I'm saying there's a responsible way of dealing with controlling a gun, as Mr. Walker
Understood.
mentioned, getting
Right.
more, so they're locked
Mr.
up.
Bromley?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yes, please.
No, I believe in the Second Amendment.
Ms. Wilford?
Yes.
All right. Here's an interesting one. Would you be in favor of a small fee on each plastic grocery bag used in Northglenn? No. Mr. Ember?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Not without voter approval, no. But sustainability, yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see. Rosie, I'm going to invite you back up here while I ask perhaps the last question. So we've heard about the homeless and displaced folks and what have you. I've heard touches on the subject, but I hadn't heard any real solutions tonight per se, except a couple, and I will give credit to those. Is there anything else that we haven't heard tonight? So this can be a very short response that hasn't been addressed. Ms. Luqman-Hermosa.
I'm trying to think what I didn't mention before, but we are taking steps. There's a lot of things that are happening or about to happen with countywide assistance that we can look at. So regarding helping people actually move into housing is, like I mentioned before, a very multi-layered problem that we need to address as the layers come up. So there's mental health issues, substance abuse issues as well. So I think with countywide assistance, we can help move those folks. Some of the complaints we get are that they're living in the parks, right? So giving the parks back to the community, but also taking on a humanitarian point of view and making sure that we're moving people into programs where they can actually get homes and get jobs instead of moving them around. As we mentioned before, it is not an easy solution. We understand that residents really are concerned when they see homeless folks in our parks, and I empathize with that. I understand that. I understand when they say they don't feel safe, or if there's drug abuse happening and they see that in the parks as well. I understand that that is a concern, and it's a valid concern as well. But we need to take realistic and long-lasting steps instead of just putting Band-Aids and moving somebody to a shelter, which is 20 miles away is the nearest one. But we can't do it alone, because we do have to think about those unintended consequences, right? So, for example, the building a homeless camp or having some kind of day camp or navigation center also requires other counties to be on board as well, so that we are not facing or shouldering the burden of that by ourselves as a city, and possibly, having, if they build it, they will come kind of syndrome. So I think that we need to be careful in that as well. There are many things that we're working on right now, and I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do a 2-minute closing, and we're not going to continue with that question. I'm going to allow you to do your closing statements, and you can address this issue and then anything else. 2 minutes for your closing statements, and since Ms. Luckman-Haramosa, you didn't get to start first to begin with, I'm going to let you start.
You. First of all, I thank all of you for coming here and for listening to all of us. I think we all show the love that we have for our city, and I think diversity in opinions helps build solutions, and I think that's important that we continue to have these conversations. Whether we agree with what is being said or not is the only way that we are actually going to come up with viable solutions that you as the community can live with, and that we as your council hear you as you are our constituents. We need to make sure that we are on board with what the community wants as well. I'm a boots on the ground, like I said before, hands in the dirt kind of person. I am willing to continue to work hard. I've already put a lot of effort in the last few months. I'm invested moving forward. And I have a business to run, and I know this is a commitment that I am willing to continue to pour blood, sweat, and tears in to make sure that our city continues to be a safe city, that our city continues to be a place where people can afford to live, where our seniors are taken care of and can age in place, where our businesses are supported and business retention, we bring in new businesses, where we continue to work on different types of housing and have the community on board and give input as well. So all of these things I'm invested in. As I mentioned before, I am a proactive kind of person. I've already taken many, many steps. Homelessness was one of the issues since I got on board that I really am pushing forward. I've called for meetings to make sure we address this, because I hear you loud and clear in what you're saying is happening. And I understand this needs to be taken care of. But I want a long-term solution, as I know that will benefit everyone, and make sure that we can do this correctly.
Thank you very much.
Let's see, and that's all I have. Thank you.
That's perfect. Mr. Walker.
So thank you. I just want to thank everyone for coming and for the Rotary Club for putting this on. I did have a little bit of a blank earlier in the code enforcement, and we talked a lot about weeds, but there's a danger to every single person here that has a home or is renting. And I challenge all of you to go home and look and see how many cars are blocking fire hydrants when you go home tonight. It's a real hot button issue for me. For someone being lazy enough to walk 8 feet away from it, it poses a real danger to structures and to life. So I challenge you that, and hold your police accountable for that, because they drive by it all the time and nothing is done. I'll leave you with just kind of a vision for some things I'd like to start discussing It's definitely well beyond just the City Council of Northland, but that would be the possibility of doing things like leaving the Tri-County Health Department. We are not Denver County, we are not Boulder County, we are Adams, and we're proud of that. And the leadership that was shown at the beginning of the pandemic was a very copy and paste, a lack of accountability type leadership from our Tri-County Health Department. There was no real science used in any of their findings. And so I commend Douglas County for leaving them. It took a lot of courage and strength, and we need to start exploring those options too, because maybe we can be getting more for our money that we paid to the Tri-County Health Department, as they clearly failed us. And back to you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Montour, please.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the community. I want to say thank you to the Rotary Club for having us. Thank you to the candidates that are here and expressing yourself and your opinions freely. I base my campaign on equity, equality, and change. I come to this time in my life where I'm running as a candidate. I'm not a career politician. My movement here started from a gentleman stealing the flags off of my porch and burning them, which were our tribal flags. And when he burned our tribal flags, he said he thought they were Antifa flags. I vowed at that moment that I would be in that seat in government to make a change. Not just for me, but for those other citizens that have had those same things happen to them. When we talk about the holding the police accountable, when the police came into my home for that, they called the gentleman on the phone to issue a summons. Would they ever do that to a person of color? When I look at myself in city government, I look at how do we make these changes? How do we look at not police being reactive, but proactive with our homeless, bringing a team out that is able to service them. Mental health, resources, home, and bring those things to a reality in our communities. To be able to bring access in our community to our city government. Through language, accessibility, I had a community member say, I don't have a computer and I don't have internet. Don't tell me to go on the website. We need to take our government to the community and be active in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Montour. Mr. Jaramillo.
Thank you. And thank you all who all attended here and everybody watching at home. Northglenn is home. It's been home to me. It's the only home I know. And I want to continue to make Northglenn a safe, wonderful place to live that will enrich lives for generations. I feel that we can do it together. And it's listening to each other, it's knowing your neighbor, and having that sense of community. And I think that's where we'll be strongest, is being together, listening to each other, and also, knowing that these issues are happening in our community. Hearing that now and hearing everybody else's concerns, sometimes we don't see these issues because when we come home from work, maybe we just come home, eat dinner, go to sleep, wake up, and do the same thing. But sometimes there's people that are looking for help. Some people, we need to reach out to each other and be a community where we know our next door neighbor, we know our neighbors on our street and by a first name basis, and know that Northglenn is a place that we can have generations live there, age in our homes, be our forever homes, as you hear the term. And I believe that's what Northglenn has been, and I believe that these younger generations moving in, that they would like that too. And if we need to continue to address situations, that we can continue to address these situations here as City Council. And I know if I'm elected, I'll be able to work together with each and every person here and everybody that's elected, including the mayor, to make our vision for Northglenn a positive and bright one for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Renberg, please.
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out, for all the people who are watching, and I again thank the Rotary Club for facilitating this event. This is pretty cool, if I'm being honest. But there are a few things that I want to quickly address. The 65, I think it's like 60 to 65% of the revenue generated by the city comes from sales and use tax. So that means that the city is at the whims of, national economic turmoils. And that, we just saw that with the pandemic. And to really understand, to maybe diversify how the city gets money so that it doesn't have to be at the whims of national crisis. They're talking about, inflation being like 6% by the time the winter comes around. People not being able to get gifts for Christmas, that your gas prices are going to be insane. We need to discuss this as a community and understand how the government, again, uses these funds and how to make it more equitable and fair for everyone. In learning about, bond issuance and all these things, I truly believe in the notion of using taxpayer money for the taxpayers in such a way that, again, taxpayers benefit from it. And I think we all need to have this conversation about, again, ownership of the city, of who the city works for, and how we're facilitating, government institutions. I truly believe in my country and my community, and I've seen it grow and change. And there's nothing more that I could ever dream of than this place being something better than now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renberg. Mr. Bromley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you, Rotary Club of Northglenn Thornton. And I'd like to thank the people of Northglenn for viewing this and watching us and making your decision on your votes over this debate that we're having. And, well, Northglenn's my family, and I care about Northglenn deeply. And I'm actually concerned about some of the hateful attitudes that I've received from the City Council and other individuals within the city itself over partisan values. I think the city needs to move forward and actually start to be more accepting of diverse political viewpoints. And I think that our City Council shouldn't be just a chorus of one, it should be a chorus of many. And I do hope that the City of Northglenn does find it that I, Mark Bromley, should be on that City Council to actually service the best interests of the City of Northglenn and the citizens thereof of this city. Because I know from growing up here, from when I was a kid, back in the 1970s when most of Northglenn was actually being put together at that time, that Northglenn can actually be a vibrant, beautiful community that is actually built on the American way and not some other kind of charity or some kind of socialist program that is completely forgetting that what we should be as Americans is striving for better business, fixing our economy, and making sure our schools are the best and rising that schools districts from number 40 in the world to the top 10. And if we stay more focused on what actually makes for American success, we will actually do a lot better here in the city of Northglenn, because that's how Northglenn was built when I was actually living with Mayor Odell Berry as one of our mayors of the city, that I used to trick or treat his house, by the way. So, by the way, everybody bring your kids out to trunk or treat on 23rd and actually experience real Northglenn and just get out there and see Northglenn for what it is. Thank you all for coming tonight and stuff like that, and I appreciate it. I guess it's my closing statement, so I appreciate you all showing up here. Thanks,
Mr. Bromley. Ms. Wilford, to close this out.
I want to start by echoing all of the gratitude that I've heard this evening to the Rotary Club for facilitating this opportunity, to the residents who are watching, to the candidates that are up here on stage. You all put your hand up for a pretty big job, and I want to say thank you, because these conversations that we're having this evening are absolutely moving our community forward and making our community a better place. I, in my heart, believe that democracy works best when we have diverse voices at the table and diverse perspectives, and you all are certainly a part of that chorus today. And then also, I want to say thank you to the folks that came out today. It looks like we've got a lot of family members in the audience. I've seen a lot of head nods when different candidates were talking, so definitely family members out there. Thank you all so much for sharing your loved one with the community and making this opportunity possible for them. I have heard, I think we've all heard a lot of the challenges that are facing our community, and I don't want us to be intimidated, because I think, there are challenges that we're going to have to face head on, whether it's in life or in Northland, and we've got the tools and the skills and the right people on the job to face those challenges. I will say that for every challenge that we also have a lot of really exciting things happening in Northland. There is a lot that each and every one of you can be really proud of as we look ahead to the future. For example, this building that you're sitting in, we are also, as a community, building bigger tables and including more residents in our decision-making processes. We're hosting more events in the parks and creating opportunities for people to get to know their neighbors and build onto the community that we all love so much. So with that, I will just say, please get your ballots in, make sure that they're in on time, and together we'll continue to make Northland shine. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. This wraps it up. And thank you, Mark, for handling a lot of provocative questions, and I think everybody got a better idea of who's on the ballot and what they stand for, and that's what this is all about. We got a number of questions from the audience, but we actually had a bunch more, and we could have gone on for a while, but we wanted to make sure that this wasn't a marathon. So for those of you who gave me questions, I'm going to share them with the candidates, and I'll email those questions to you, so at least you know what the sentiment is from those who were here tonight. So there are voter registration forms out in the lobby. If you're not registered, our city clerk is here tonight. You can give it to her very safely, and be sure that you vote. Be sure that you vote. Be sure that you vote. Those of us here will certainly do that, I'm sure, but I'm speaking to the millions of viewers that we have. I know we have at least a million. And
It will go viral.
yeah, oh, and it's going to go viral, yeah, that's for sure. And Mark and I are going to be nominated for Academy Awards. We are absolutely sure of that. And remind your neighbors that this is streaming on YouTube. Have them go to YouTube and see this presentation tonight. I think it's important. It's also going to be on Channel 8. So there's 2 ways that friends and neighbors can see this if they didn't make it tonight. So we've got a question.
Yeah, where can we find the answers to their feedback from the questions that the audience asked?
We just don't have a mechanism for that. You can ask them out in there's a meet and greet afterwards, so you can ask them directly.
No, I'm wondering the questions that the audience has asked. Where can we find their answers to them?
That's a good question, and we haven't thought of that, to be honest with you.
And since we'll provide that to them, they can respond in their own websites on anything that strikes their fancy or interest, and hopefully they'll do so as much as possible. It's getting down to the wire here.
Thank you for the question, though. That's a good one.
It is.
Thank you. We are done.
Thank you.